Have you ever wondered if it's possible to travel for free? Or maybe you're wondering if there's some budget-friendly ways to travel around the world. If you're new here, my name's Amy. I'm a full-time traveler who's originally from Canada, and I've spent the past 8 years traveling on and off to 45 different countries. I've also lived in Australia, England, Wales, and South Africa. One of the biggest ways I've been able to save money while traveling is by doing work trades through Worldpackers. I did one in Uganda at an NGO in 2022, and I also just recently completed one at the end of 2023 at a hostel in Cape Town. I'm gonna get into how the exchange works, the pros and cons, how to find the best work trades, and my honest review of my previous work exchanges. That way you can find out if Worldpackers is the right choice for you and if ultimately it's worth it. Worldpackers is a platform that connects travelers and hosts from around the world. It's an app and a website, and essentially you pay an annual fee as a solo traveler or as a couple to get on the platform. Once you have a membership, you are able to message hosts and start applying for these opportunities. If you're on the fence, you can start browsing the opportunities before you buy the membership and see what's kind of out there in the countries that you're hoping to visit. You can also find the best exchanges over on my TikTok. I've been reviewing different exchanges and finding the best opportunities for specific destinations. So if you're interested in that, go check it out over here. In terms of the actual exchange, it's going to differ depending on the type of work you're looking to do. So it could be gardening work, it could be working reception at a hostel, it could be working at a school. There's so many different options, and the amount of hours that you're gonna have to work will also depend on the opportunity that you go with. The biggest and most obvious pro that I can think of is that you're saving money on accommodation. Most opportunities offer free accommodation in exchange for these hours of work. However, some of them do include an additional fee, which is something I'm going to get into a little bit later in this video. On the flip side, others will include free meals, free laundry, free activities, and discounts on like partying and bars and drinks and stuff like that. You'll also have a chance to connect more with locals, which I think is amazing because typically when you're traveling and backpacking, you're meeting a lot of tourists. So you're meeting people from other countries, which is great, but you're not really connecting with the actual locals from that place. But when you do one of these work trades, you have a much more in-depth opportunity to get to know these people and really just listen to their stories, hear where they're from, and learn more about that culture. You might also learn a new skill. I know a lot of people do these work trades who are trying to learn English because it gives them a good opportunity to practice their English, but this also works for countries where they speak Spanish and you want to practice Spanish, or you want to learn a new skill like something along the lines of gardening or handyman work and stuff like that, and you're willing to learn. And lastly, one of the major pros is that you have the Worldpackers safeguard. This protection keeps you safe in case you get to an opportunity and it's not what it was advertised to be, so you feel unsafe and you need to leave. In this situation, they will help you find a new place to stay, and they will cover the expense of a hostel dorm elsewhere for 3 nights. You can pay for additional protection when you get your plan, but the standard one is for 3 days, which is honestly pretty good because it gives you a chance to get out of there if you don't feel like it's a good place for you. Jumping right into the cons, the time commitment can be a lot. A lot of listings don't really give you that much time to explore and travel, especially if you're working a remote job like I am. If a listing has more than 20 to 25 hours per week, you can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to have that much time to see a place. I've also found that hosts aren't fully honest about the amount of hours that you're going to be expected to work, so there'll usually be some additional hours, which is why I try to keep it under 20 hours per week. Another con is that long stays are often required, and usually this wouldn't be an issue for someone that's traveling long term, but if you have a job and you need to get back and you only have a certain amount of vacation time, 3 to 4 weeks at a minimum is kind of a long time to commit. It's also a long time to commit to volunteering in general, just because you don't know what you're getting into fully, and it might not be something that you want to stick with for the full 3 or 4 weeks. And lastly, going back to the charge for accommodation, some will charge you for accommodation because, especially in Africa, they need this money to put towards their NGOs and their volunteer programs to build it out and to make it a better experience for the locals. I kind of hate how there isn't an option to filter these ones out because it kind of defeats the purpose of having a membership for Worldpackers, in my opinion. You're already spending money to be on this platform to look for free accommodation. There should be a way to get rid of the option for additional fees. When it comes to finding the best opportunities, the first thing you need to look for is no more than 20 hours of work per week. I already kind of got into this a little bit, but I really think that expecting a volunteer to work more than 20 or max 25 hours per week is asking a lot. When it comes to reviews, don't be afraid to creep all the reviews on different listings, see what people are saying, and if there isn't a unanimous great vote on this person, then I wouldn't go with that host. I would also make sure to message people who have previously been volunteers with this host, because they might not always be fully honest and put their full opinion and view about the experience, because they are getting a review from the host as well. I know personally I've toned down my reviews because I didn't want them to leave me a bad one in return, so that's something to keep in mind. When it comes to location, you should definitely look up the location ahead of time and know specifically where you're going to be staying. For me, I don't want to be somewhere remote that's far from a main city, is inaccessible by public transit, because that takes away from the travel experience for me. So make sure you look into that and know where you're going to be staying. Also, when it comes to the room, a lot of the time it's going to be a shared dorm or a team dorm, which is fine. Obviously, I think most people prefer to be in a private room, which is not going to be an option a lot of the time. But one thing that I didn't realize was that you should check for photos of the room you're going to be staying in. My previous one in Cape Town, I was in the tiniest shoebox room with one other volunteer. It was literally so small, I couldn't sit up in my bunk bed. I was like, it went up to this on my head, so I had to like crawl into bed every single night. And I couldn't really spend any time in my room if I wanted to get away from the entire hostel of people. Next, you should look for free activities, free food, free laundry, all of that. This is the best, because this is where like you want to put the work in and volunteer, because you're getting more out of it. I do think there has to be a give and a take. You should be willing to put this effort in and do a good job to help with whatever role you're doing. However, you should be getting a good amount back as well. And lastly, I would suggest for your first one to go with a partner or a friend. You can get a membership as like a pack for 2 people, and it's actually cheaper than getting a solo one when you split it with someone else. So that's a good call, because so many times the 2 times that I've volunteered, I haven't necessarily clicked really well with other volunteers. And I find if you go with someone else that you already know, you're gonna have a great experience no matter what, if you're good friends or you're dating. So I would try that for your first opportunity, because it'll make you feel more comfortable and likely be a more positive experience. Alrighty, so let me tell you about my experience volunteering in Uganda. I was volunteering at this NGO that was about 2 hours from Kampala, the capital, in a place called Jinja. So the nonprofit was actually amazing. It was run by a guy in his late 20s, and it was for orphans and single mother households, so the children would have the chance to go to school and get a proper education, as well as meals throughout the day. I was there not to teach, because they already have teachers, but to help with social media, content, videography, photography, and everything like that, to help with the fundraising. And I really enjoyed what I was doing. At this opportunity, I lived in a volunteer dorm, and the room was a decent size. The bathroom had literally just one sheet to cover, and it didn't have like a proper toilet seat or anything. It was pretty bare bones, but that's just how it goes when you're in Uganda. There wasn't internet throughout the whole time that I stayed there. The power would cut a lot, but I kind of knew that this would be the case going in, so I didn't expect to do much work when I was there, because I was also going to a pretty remote spot in Africa. One thing I didn't realize was that I'd have to pay for my airport pickup, because on Worldpackers it said that it would be free. This wasn't really a big deal at the end of the day, but it was a long drive, so it does make sense that I would have to pay for the fuel. This was a paid experience, and the money that you donated, I think it was 10 euros a day, went to the organization. So it went directly to putting money back into the school and for the children. This experience didn't particularly have any downtime, because you would be at the school helping out, and then when you came back you would be living with the kids, because the orphans were living with this guy who ran the NGO and his girlfriend, and their like family. So basically we were with probably 6 orphans living with us in that house, and it was a small house. The kids were amazing. These kids were like so cute. But yeah, you don't really have much time because you're doing stuff with them all the time. And we would be helping out with cooking and cleaning and stuff, mostly the cooking. And I really enjoyed that because you learned some of the meals that they would make. Honestly, I really enjoyed this experience, and even though it wasn't necessarily the best for travel, it was such a good experience to have, to just see an entirely different part of the world and see how they live. So most recently, I volunteered at a hostel in Cape Town, which is probably my favorite city in the world. I love Cape Town, and I was really excited to go back. My role was bartender, and I knew ahead of time that it was 30 hours a week, but I think in my mind, I was like, oh no, there's no way it'll be 30 hours a week, it'll be less. I was wrong. It was honestly more like 40 hours a week, which was my biggest issue with this job. Also the fact that they didn't list that there was a lot of math that you had to do with counting the bar stock and doing the cash up in the morning the next day after your shift. So yeah, this was really frustrating for someone like me who's horrible at math, and I really wouldn't have chosen this hostel if I had known this ahead of time. The fact that there were so many hours and I had a full-time remote job doing my own work, my content creation and stuff like that online, it was really hard for me to balance both jobs with traveling and actually enjoying my time there. I did have a chance to meet up with lots of friends, but I didn't really have much of a chance to go do new things and explore a new part of South Africa or Cape Town. Realizing that I couldn't do as much as I wanted to alongside another volunteer who felt the exact same way, I was just thinking, 40-hour-a-week job worth this $15 dorm room? In my mind, it definitely wasn't. With that being said, I did meet some really good people that worked at this hostel. I had great conversations with people that worked there and people visiting and staying at the hostel. And it was overall a positive experience, but I would never do this one again. Despite both experiences not exactly being what I had expected from the beginning, I am still happy that I did it. I learned a lot from them, and I'm always still browsing different options to see what's available. I think I went in blind, not really knowing much about this whole experience and how it would work with different hostels and organizations. But now that I know what to look out for, I think that it's going to be even better moving forward. I also think there's so many good hosts out there, and if you find a good one, it's going to be a great time, and you can save on accommodation for 2 months, 3 months, depending on how long you want to stay. Again, if you're doing more than 20 to 25 hours of work per week, I don't really think it's worth it, but it does depend on what you're getting out of the experience, because it would be worth it if you're living somewhere where the accommodation costs a lot of money, or if you're getting a lot of add-ons like free food and activities. So you really just have to weigh those different options and see what works for you. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video. I hope you learned something new about Worldpackers and are maybe interested in trying it out for yourself. If you are, I will leave a link in the description box below, and you can use the code Spellbound Travels to get $10 off any new membership. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe because I put out new videos every single week while I'm traveling. You can find some of them here if you want to check them out now. And I will see you next week for another video. Bye.